Yo, what's up, guys? This is Adrian, the web scraping guy, and I just created a community node for scrape creators, and I wanted to show you how to do it or how I did it and some of the learnings that I had from it, some pitfalls that I ran into. So I hope this helps. And this is a tutorial for if you're actually building a community node. Mine isn't in production yet, like isn't available on N8N quite yet. So maybe this video is a little premature, but this is what it looks like right now. So if we try to like add a node or something, then we have this thing, scrape creators, and then you can do all of these things. So if we want to get a YouTube channel's videos, and then yeah, we have the Pat McAfee show, and then if we execute, boom, we get all those videos. Sweet. And then you can see all of the things that we have available, like for LinkedIn, you get profile, blah, blah, blah. YouTube again. Yeah, you can get all these different like operations. So one thing that I want to say right off the bat is you're kind of limited by N8N's pattern. And their pattern here is like resource and operations. There's like the only two things that you can do. And it's very, like they developed it in a very RESTful way, or RESTful pattern. So if you look at the Reddit node, they built this, I believe, like N8N themselves. So this is their pattern. And I think the idea was like you have this idea or this service, so Reddit, and then you have all of these things that you can do with Reddit. So post comment, profile, and subreddit. And you can see the RESTful pattern. You like the CRUD operations. Create a post, delete, get many, and search for a post. Like that's very like Rails, CRUD, REST kind of stuff. But for mine, and if you would go into this stuff, you can see, so this is the resource. This is important if you're building a node, a community node. So resources and then operations. So you can see, yep, you have all these operations and resources. And then these are just parameters. But as you can see, like if you're thinking about your own use case, you could kind of see like, oh, well, maybe it doesn't work exactly for my use case. So for me, then I said Instagram actions, like each of these actions are a social media. And then, or yeah, the resources are the social media, and the operation is like the individual get request for the scraper, the individual scraper. So if you look at some other ones, like if we look at like, yeah, this AI scraper, then yeah, they don't have very many, but ooh, see, that is confusing as hell. I think N8N wants you to avoid making it so confusing looking for the users. So anyway, that's kind of what we're going to be doing. And if you look at the documentation, then you just follow this, then you can get up and running. This is the N8N, like NASA picks, this is their tutorial or demo for how to build a declarative style node. And you and me are going to be building declarative style nodes. There's also this thing called programmatic style node, and that I think like triggers other nodes or whatever. And most of the time you're not going to be using that, I don't think. So follow this example, and a couple of things that you'll want to know. You only need these three files here. So your service, or NASA picks, node.json, node TS, and credentials. Let's take a look at credentials first. So for my credentials, then yeah, I have the documentation URL, and then the properties. I believe this is just in the UI on N8N. This is what people see. So it's going to say API key, so they can put their API key there. And I believe like these things need to match up. So name, you can see is the same right there. So then to authenticate, then for my API, you just need to include an XAPI key and put that there. So I believe that this is what we need to do. Although, if you come over here to the node.ts, then I also put this right here. So request defaults, here's the base URL, and then the header's XAPI key is credentials.api key. So I don't know if you need it in both places, but whatever, it works. So yeah. So you can see we took a little peek at node.ts and node.json. There's like basically nothing in it. Maybe I'll need more of it later. Let's see, scrape creators node.json. Yeah, so you can see there's not a lot in it. So I just copy and pasted what N8N had. But then here is the big behemoth that has everything in it, which is scrapecreators.node.ts or yourservice.node.ts right here. So this is going to have the big array that has everything in it. Well, I guess this is an object, but then the properties array is where you're going to live. So one thing that you need to be aware of is whatever they have in their documentation, I needed to change slightly. So inputs and outputs needs to look like this. And then everything else is just what they have. So pretty easy, like standard stuff. And yeah, apparently I have the credentials there required. Yeah. So just do that if you need, if your API is like authenticated. And yeah, here is the big thing here. So let me show you this in the UI. So you see this thing called resource. So these things are all resources here. These things. I guess like actions, resources. I guess they're actions. So you can see these options right here. Boom, 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 boom. Those are all right here. These like the top ones. The get a Twitter profile is an operation, but the action is everything right here. So yeah, that's that. And we default to Instagram, which you saw like when you open the community node, that's what'll show up. And then what I recommend you do is put all of the operations in separate files and then just import them like they do here, because this is just a big flat array. So to separate them like makes things so much easier to read and reason through and understand, like separate the concerns. Also, if you have any questions, here's the documentation. Not a whole lot on the documentation. So what's better is just going into this. This is, yeah, N8N. I guess this is just the repo for N8N, and then looking at the nodes and then looking at their implementation for different nodes. So you can see like for Airtable, we have node.ts. Yeah, then we can see exactly what they were doing there. It's not very helpful with Airtable though. But like for, and I'll show you this later, but for Okta, it's like really helpful what they were doing right here. So if you have any questions, probably best just to like look at their examples. The documentation can be helpful, but their examples are probably more helpful. So anyway, so going back to, yeah, all of the operations, and the naming convention here, I think is whatever like name you have and then operations. So you can see, yeah, Instagram operations. And then the file is called your, whatever the name is in description. I don't know why that is, but it looks like that's their convention. So you can see like right here, then for Okta, then everything is like description. And then they export, it's called operations. So not sure why they do that. But anyway, if we are on like Instagram here, then the first thing in this array, so this is a big fat array. The first thing is going to be the display name here. Yeah, I think it's going to be like, this is the same for every single description. Yeah. Oh, you have these options right here. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So this is where you're actually going to have like all of the requests. And this is the drop down right here, the options. So just like you saw here. Yep. Like if we stick with Instagram, then these are in the options array here, right here. So you can see get profile, get users posts. Get profile, get users posts. And then you have to make the actual, or you have to format the get request right here. And these are query parameters right here. I'm not sure what QS stands for, but that's it. So where do we get parameter handle? Well, if we get rid of options for now, or collapse that, then the next thing in the array is going to be, so you have this big array, next thing in the array is going to be your parameters right here. So this is handle. And we have get profile, handle right there. And then you can actually use this handle throughout all of the operations. So this is like the same one. Right here, right here, right here. And you can see for show that I'm showing it for get Instagram profile, get Instagram users post, blah, blah, blah. And that operation, like that name, is right there, like the value. See that? Same thing. So you're going to show and hide those parameters when you want. Now there's a couple different options to do this. This isn't the only way to like show and hide. You can also show by like resource as well. But this is just what I'm doing. So yeah, these are just query parameters right here. Limit, you can see that one as well. If we go to, yeah, posts, boom, sweet. So those are the parameters. And like for get users posts, you can also paginate. Like on my API request, then, or on my API endpoint, let's just check that out. If you want to get a user's Instagram posts, then you can paginate with this next max ID. So you get the results and it returns this next max ID, and then you just pass that and then get more and more results. So a big problem for me was figuring out how I do that in N8N. Like how do I paginate in N8N? And yeah, there's a way to do that that makes it easy for the user. So they just have to specify how many posts that they want, and then it'll get the max of that. So I don't have 100 Instagram posts, so this might get like 50 or something. But how you do that was a little bit tricky. And how I figured this out was going to Okta's, this Okta node that they created. So, yeah. So you have to say send paginate true, and then operations pagination. Then, yeah, you have a function, and I just put this in like a util because I use this everywhere for paginating, because all of mine use like cursor pagination. So I have this thing in functions.ts, but Okta puts it in user functions, but I reuse it across all of my actions, operations. So yeah, I didn't want to put it just with one thing. So if you want to look at what they did, then you can do that. I just did this to know that I'm actually there. All right, so for paginating, this is kind of a lot. So I'll try to break it down as best as possible, like high level. But basically, you have to return an array. But you can't just push items into the array. So what you have to do is actually, you have to have an array, and the first object needs to have a property called JSON. Then you put, like, in this case, we would say posts. So that would be the property there. So posts would be the array, and that's what would be returned. And I can even show you what that looks like. So we get the user's post. Let's just say 20, execute this step. So this is actually called items and not posts. So how N8N works is that you have to return an object. Gets a little confusing because, right, this is an array which you have to return, but the thing that you actually see is going to be inside of JSON. So they have a bunch of stuff. You can even check this out, right? Blah, blah, blah. You can see this in the types. So they have all of this stuff that they need returned for whatever reason. And it's an array for whatever reason. But everything inside of JSON is what's going to be here, items. So what we are going to do, and you can see in Instagram, so I said this as items, and then this is the paginator, if you will. And what we're going to do is just push everything into items, that array. And I think you could see that right here. This, we're getting like the node parameter for the limit. And I think that's just available on this. And here, yeah, I think we're actually making the request right here. And then this is crazy as well, because we have to get like the last, like that one, like the last element or the first one. I don't know, but this is why I called it the actual response, because response data is going to return an array. And right, so it's going to return an array, and you need to key into JSON. So it's exactly what it is right here. So this thing, yeah, is just really wonky. But then we're going to push everything into like right here. You can see, boom, right here. This is what we're doing. So we're increasing the count and then pushing everything into that array, which is so disgusting, but is what it is. And then here, yeah, that we're actually returning, well, right here, but I'm slicing it to make sure that the items are exactly that length. So go figure that one. I hope that is helpful. This is disgusting, but I am just basically copying and pasting what they have here. Get cursor paginator. And as you can see, it's, yeah, kind of disgustingly written a little bit. It's just confusing with like all of the types, and like I don't really like this do while stuff. I really don't like that. I don't think that's super easy to reason through myself, but I just kept it because it works. But yeah, this is the biggest thing that you need to know. So I hope that makes sense. So anyway, the good thing is though, once you figure that out, you could just use it everywhere. So in functions, where do I have this? I just have this in my root folder, I guess. So I just have this scrape creators folder in nodes, and then I just stuff everything in there, I believe. So functions, yeah, is right there, along with all of these descriptions and the logo, and yeah, node.json and node.ts. So that's paginating. Now, for some of these, like for Reddit, then there's this thing called additional fields. And the reason I did this is because in their documentation in N8Ns, they tell you that to not overwhelm the user, to just give them like one option. And then if you need additional fields, then just put them in this additional fields thing. So whatever. But how you key into those additional fields is just slightly different than just regular parameters. So regular parameters we have just on the end of this array right here. So we have handle, name right there, boom. So that's how we key into it, like right here, parameter.handle. But for additional parameters, let's go to Reddit. Then we're going to create, yeah, this additional fields thing right here. So you can see that this is just parameter.subreddit, and then this is parameter.additional fields. So how do we get that? So this is the limit parameter, that's the subreddit, that's that, blah, blah, blah. So we go down to additional fields. So these things all have to be like consistent. So this name has to be additional fields, display name, type, collection, and then you can, yeah, display it on the operations that you want. And then it's the similar format. So there's this options array, and then, yeah, we just have a display name, you know, very similar pattern. So then this name is what we would put for right up here, operation or options. Then you key into it by parameter, additional fields, and sort. So the additional fields is right here. So this is the name. I feel like they should have called this value myself, but whatever. But this name is like important. That's how you key into all this stuff. Name, name, name. Yeah. But I think that's it. Hopefully that's helpful. If you have any questions, email me, adrian@thewebscrapingguy.com, and I'll try to answer you. Unlike N8N, which is super hard to get a hold of for anything like this, you can't ask them any questions. I don't know. I don't know where you would find someone to ask questions to. So, yeah, good luck.